I am Joshua K. Sabra, Esquire, and he is Dr. Miles Salisbury. And you are listening to the Miles Ahead podcast, where we share tactics, techniques, and protocol to improve your physical, mental, and spiritual health while you walk the path of the warrior. Stay tuned. In today's episode, Dr. Miles and I go over the definition, or our definition, of spiritual bypassing. We also talk about the value of meditation and the value of entering and leaving the maze. So, to learn all of those things, stay tuned.
And I'm back in black again with my Eagles gear. Go fly, Eagles fly. NFC champ game. I hope I didn't just jinx them. Probably did, but it can't be worse than last year when they had a complete collapse. This is better. If they win, they go to the Super Bowl. For all of those who don't know what the hell I'm talking about, if the Eagles win, they're back in the Super Bowl. So I'm not holding my breath, but I'm hopeful, cautiously optimistic. And if you're a Wrexham fan, you should be a Philly fan, because if you know, you know.
That's right. Go Eagles. They're the underdog. They're the 6 point. Is this the spreads? Eagles lose by 6.
Yeah, it's just on paper they're a better team, but Hurts, the quarterback, is hurt, and the Commanders, they're called now, are playing really well. So, but it's in Philly, so that helps. And then that's a place to play. So, anyways, the podcast today is about spiritual and emotional bypassing. And I was just thinking as we're talking it, that I sometimes use sports as a way to bypass having to feel shit.
Well, yeah, everybody needs escape, right? Like you need to go into, you need to get attached to things that don't have anything to do with your life, so that you can like have fun and escape. And Gary Vaynerchuk is a Jets fan, so he goes to the games. He's got the authentic signed jersey,
Mm-hmm.
He's got all the stuff that you would only know his gear was real expensive if you were a diehard Jets fan.
He wants to buy the team one day. Hope he does.
Yeah, he wants to buy the team. He's all in it. And then for 2 hours, he doesn't care anything about anything except for what's going on.
He's in the zone of, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's a healthy version. I think that it's just the wisdom to know, are you checking out, because some men will take the whole Saturday and Sunday, college football, and they don't even care about the team. They'll just sit there and like zone out, and then Sunday do the same thing and just watch football, and like your whole weekend's just dead. I can't do that. I'll watch my teams and then it's off. So yeah. Sometimes I can see myself using it as a distraction tool, but usually it's because it's my team, or I will purposely not watch it because I get too stressed out and I can't deal with it. So I will do something else.
Yeah.
Anyways,
it's a way to be a part of something.
Yeah. Yeah. Dr. Huberman was talking about this the other day. I think there are studies done that show that this probably goes way back to back in the day times. When your team wins, your testosterone goes up, and if you lose, your testosterone goes down. It's probably like, because this is my guess, is like, I think it was the Mayans, you can had that game where they had to put the ball through that circle. It's like the first game, it's like a sideways basketball hoop. The losers all got fucking sacrificed. So you probably wanted to win. I would imagine your testosterone would go up high if you won, because you survived, and probably drop because you're going to be dead. Or losers on the battlefield back in the day knew they might be enslaved or decapitated or whatever. So there's probably some truth to that. But they have studied that if your team wins, your T goes up, and if they lose, you feel a little bit low T, depressed.
Well, yeah. I mean, winning increases your testosterone. It's why, like, The Onion had a clip that was like, it was satirical news, but the news anchor was like, he said,
it's supposed to be.
A new study finds that depression hits losers hardest. And it's as the usual, the onion is too on the money, because when something bad happens to somebody who has low self-concept and it's in a streak of bad things, they identify with it, right? So they get depressed faster, and and if you are somebody who is on a winning streak, and then some one thing goes wrong, you lose one deal, one client quits, you're like, okay, oh great, now I have a break in my schedule so I can go work out.
That's a different narrative, yeah.
So but yes, winning increases your testosterone, losing decreases it. And if you feel like you are part of the culture and part of the team for the Philadelphia Eagles, then a win like gets you amped up. I've seen you pretty amped after an Arsenal win.
Oh yeah, Arsenal too. Yeah, the one yesterday. I had a good day. And back in the day, like I have to not get caught in the ups and downs, because it would like tank my day if they blew a big game. I'd just be like, just miserable bastard the whole day.
Which is we're gonna end on that. I want to end on sports teams and getting fired up and participating in parasocial relationships through sports and through media, because I think that's a great closer to this whole conversation. What are you listening to right now?
Mostly podcasts. The song that just was about to play next on my shuffle, Pyramid Song by Radiohead. Radiohead is one of my favorite bands.
Classic.
Pyramid Song. Radiohead. They rule. Been liking them since I was, what was that, like 8th grade, I think. Then that song Creep came out. They're amazing. What about you?
I've been listening to Tiger Army, Forever Fades Away.
Haven't heard of it.
I think I've mentioned it one time before, 6 months ago. My girlfriend and her sister are going to go to the Warped Tour this year. And in 2006, I went to the Warped Tour with some of my friends, and Tiger Army was there. So was Bad Religion. So was Offspring.
Oh, cool.
And then a bunch of underground bands. Mm-hmm. And it was cool for so many reasons. It was cool. One, it's cool to be 20. It's cool to, I didn't know anything about the scene. And the Warped Tour is at the time, it was a very young person's crowd. It seemed like, because the show we went to, which was out in St. Helens, is where the venue was. The Tiger Army played, and we were getting a beer in between sets, because like there was a bunch of bands playing we don't know. And the drummer came in and started chatting up one of the gals we were with, and we're like, "Holy shit, is Delane gonna go home with this freaking drummer? Like, this is gonna be crazy." But she wasn't having it, and I was thinking, it was like, I
so
go
close.
home with them. Like,
exactly. You got a wig.
I'm more status oriented apparently. I'm like, dude, you're so cute. Whatever.
Yeah, I'm a roadie. Come on.
Yeah. So, my girlfriend brought the Warped Tour, brought up a bunch of memories. So I've been back on Tiger Army.
All right. Fair enough.
Yeah. So, but on that nostalgia note, I had a wonderful, one of those soulful conversations that I had with, I got to have with an old friend. Did you ever connect with somebody that you knew from way back, and you got to see the different versions of them in their life? And we had a whiskey, and we were kind of just, catching up on where we had gone and where we'd been. And she brought up this question that I guess her workplace, they have like a kickoff question for the week of like something to change up the mood and shift focus to something more abstract, because they're marketing. I forgot what the product is and what they're working on, but the question of the week for them was, if you had a time machine and you could go back in time to any point in your life, what point of time would you go back in time to? What would you do? It could be like the butterfly effect, where you try to change something and see what happens if you don't go home with that person, or don't take that job, or don't move to a new city. Or you could go back and you could go to the meet cute, so you could get to experience that first date again, or whatever.
You only get one moment?
No, you can go back in any time. You can play it however you want.
Well, that's really multiverse.
It's totally multiverse. So it's more of, I mean, I think it's a great question because it cues up where you're at now and what you think the most significant or some of the most significant moments of your life were the forks in the road,
Mm-hmm.
and what they meant to you or should have meant to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a really great cueing question.
It is. Yeah, and it sort of cues you to like, was the poison in the medicine and your choice or not choice of what happened? Or so the obstacles away, using the pain of what you went through as fire to fuel you towards what you need to burn through to get to the thing you actually wanted.
Yeah. Well, the thing you actually wanted.
Well, you don't know. Yeah. That's the rub right there.
When you said that, what were you imagining?
So you asked me this question the other day, and I think I've talked about this on the podcast before. Like, one of my major regrets is still I haven't reconciled with myself fully, is the whole, like, at that decision point, graduating from high school. And I didn't even know that, like, my dad should have been telling me this, that, did you know that your dad, your grandpa was in the Naval Academy and he was a fighter pilot, and you too could go to the Naval Academy for college. Wasn't talking about that. And then I wanted to go in the Marines, and he's like, now you're going to college, like just normal with no war. And I wanted to do the Marines. And I'm fairly sure that my stepmom at the time maybe was actively sabotaging my life, because that's just what she did. And maybe she didn't like me wanting to do that. I have no idea, but it was like I didn't want to disappoint him. And so I listened to him-ish. I kind of actually did nothing. And I'm going to spend 3 months in Hawaii because he's from there, and they kind of shipped me off. And like, I thought they were doing me a service. I was like, motherfucker, they just kicked me out of the house for 3 months to get rid of me. I was like, that was sneaky. That was really crafty. You didn't want me around, and we're sending you to Hawaii. Wink, wink, nod, nod. And I just sat there and languished. And then I remember a letter showing up.
One second.
That's just, again, way off course, but just stay with me for a second.
I love you languished in Hawaii. You have some great stories. Keep going.
I have plenty, yes. And I was languishing when I should have been flourishing in Hawaii. I mean, fucking Hawaii, I'm the Big Island. But like, as far as like growth and spirituality and my future, I was doing fuck all, like smoking weed and like not playing video games, like at my aunt's house. Like, just, it was fun. Like, but I'm basically like doing what I was doing with my dumbass friends at that time. But
you're being an 18-year-old. That's what we were doing in the Army. We were just doing it in Germany, just playing video games and drinking beer.
Yeah, but you got to that point. You had some people there looking after you. Like, you were doing like something you wanted to do, kind of. I would rather have been where you were, but yeah, so very close. So I'm sitting here in Hawaii, and then a mail thing shows up from my dad, and it's like, he's registered me. Hey, you got into college. I'm like, what? I didn't even fucking like sign up for college. He's like, yeah, I signed you up. Here's your first semester of classes, and he picked all my classes for me, and I was like, man, because I was just gonna like come back and maybe try again with the military, or maybe I'll just like kind of be a rebel and kind of like do like junior college or something, just to split the difference. I was in that I want some independence phase / I don't want you to leave my life stage. It was really a tough spot to be in emotionally, but I'm just following the quote unquote the plan that he had. But the fact that I did that, and I've talked about this on the podcast before. I mean, I went through like a year of that school and hated it, and was super depressed and had some fun suicidal ideation and all that good stuff that people go through when they're in the dark. I was going to transfer to U of O at that point. I was at Western Oregon, and I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I dropped to like 6 credits. I had to take intro to dance, and that's when I found dance, and that's when it completely turned my life around. And the only reason I'm where I am now is because I took that stupid class. And there's a whole backstory in multiple episodes. I think it's the origin story one where I talk about how that happened, if the listener's curious. So here I am. Here we are doing this podcast. Had I actually listened to the recruiter and not my dad and signed up for the Marines, I could be dead because I would have been part of. This was right before 9/11, so I would have been doing whatever was going on there. Would have been a very different person. So who knows? But I still have regrets, and I get just a little bit of that back doing the Coast Guard Auxiliary. At least I'm doing some sort of service in the military that you get, but it's not what I envisioned myself doing, which wasn't even a whole lot. Like back then, I still thought like, yeah, I want to be in the NBA or the Premier League or something. Like every kid wants to be an athlete and a superstar. Like those thoughts are still floating around my mind. So that's kind of a late bloomer anyways. But that's a regret that I still struggle with. So when you asked me that question the other day, that one just bubbled up immediately. So I always say first thought, best thought. Some part of me has a knowing that that's still something that needs to be reconciled within myself. But I have many other things that would go back and change, of course, but that's probably the largest one.
Well, I think there's so much gold there, but I think one thing that should be pointed out is you can't know how any of these things turns out, right? Like in our imagination, let's say that you had full control and editorial authority about what was going to happen, and you said, you got to Hawaii, you smoked some pot, and then you went down to the recruitment center and you enlisted in the Marines. Great.
I don't know, I got kicked out of my P test probably at that point. Because back then weed was really, really bad.
For sure, yeah.
It was like meth.
I watched people in the Navy get chaptered out
for weed.
Yeah,
and now that's no factor. Well, it's still a factor,
but the
less of a factor.
Let's say that you enlisted and you didn't get your leg blown off in Fallujah, and like, then what? Right? Like, do you do 30 years in the Marine Corps? Do you become the commandant in the Marine Corps? And is it about the adventure of being a Marine, or is it about being enough?
Back then it was adventure. It was, I had these I knew both my grandpas were fighter pilots. And so it was something like, that's in the family. Okay, I want to do that. It was also like an easy, like set up, like college. What the fuck's that? I don't know what to do. Didn't really like school. Didn't know I had ADD back then. Don't know how I got through. I had a 3.0 through all through high school. I don't know how I managed a 3.0. But the military is like, they just tell you what to do and we'll train you, and someone's like hand holding you and like building you up to be a man. This sort of like archetypal that was starting to make sense in my mind, even though it was still largely unconscious. I knew something was missing, and that felt like it was speaking to me, but I didn't really know how to articulate that's what was calling me.
The rite of passage part.
Yeah, the rite of passage part, exactly, because I was not getting that. Absolutely not. I was getting no passages. I was getting the purgatory, stuck with like friends doing nothing, going backwards, smoking cigarettes and weed and like fucking off and like no future plans. I can see why my dad was slightly worried where my future was going, but I wish he would have listened more. But that's another story.
I don't know what it's like to be a parent, but the conversations around kids enlisting, I think parents are just terrified of things they don't know and they don't have control over or any insight in. Like every parent thinks that their kid is going to enlist and then immediately get shipped off to Vietnam, which doesn't exist, right? Like there's no,
Right.
But that's what they think is going to happen, that they're going to go into a meat grinder.
You're going into the front lines.
And then there's also this weird thing where people are like, oh, you'd never make, I was around a lot of bad parents.
I didn't have that one, thankfully.
You'll never make it in the Marine Corps. You'll never make it in the Air. You wouldn't make it through. It's like, well, there's an easy way to find out. Ship.
Everybody makes it through boot camp, more or less, right? Unless you have a mental break, right? It's not like buds. Like they're not trying to kick you. They're trying to get you through boot camp. Was it different for the Army?
No. Yeah. The screening process is nothing about like.
Well, the screening, yeah, but once you're in. Right. So
boot camp is like the big thing, basic training. Basic training is the indoctrination. So I had to learn how to talk and walk
The red, white, blue phases.
like you're in the military.
Mhm.
That's really all it is. What they're doing is you wash out because you don't want to be there. That's all it is.
Right. You can get yourself out, but they're not trying to like.
Yeah, it's a 15-mile ruck. Just stop walking. Get on the bus. You're done. Like, it's over. And you on the bus, the bus stops at the commander's office, and the commander asks you one more time, like, hey, you came here to enlist in the United States Army. We need you.
They try to retain you.
Yeah, they try to. They're not trying to convince you to leave. They're trying to convince you to stay,
like the SEALs would. Go ahead, see ya.
Well, every step up the ladder is the stakes are higher for mistakes. So they want you to get out the door.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So in airborne school, if you're stalling at the jump door, you're not in the paratroopers, right? Like they don't need that person. So if you're uncertain about what you are doing, go.
In a higher stakes game. Hell yeah.
But it starts when you swear the oath of enlistment. Like everything after that is screening you out. It's like if you want to be a mechanic, you still need to show up on time and be like good to go.
Yep.
And if you're not, leave. And it's like, but every tier up, the stakes are higher, and they give more and more opportunities to go. But I think the washout rate is, it depends on the cycle. Probably at the time, I think it was like 15%
for basic
or 21%, something like that. Yeah, this is right at the beginning. This is 2002 numbers, but the biggest, it's like medical school. The biggest disqualifying factor is that the applicant, right? Applicants disqualify themselves, by not applying. That's the number one screen.
Or they get to the cadaver stage.
But so to take it back to your spot. Okay, so that's your butterfly moment, right? For that moment, you didn't feel like you took ownership of your life in a way that you wanted to. Today, this is today's language, and like who knows where you'll be at in a moment. And so that's a nugget of, if I had done this differently, I would be in a different place today.
I think that's maybe what the ego says, or the regret says. The regret part of me says, yeah. Yeah, and I think there's a part of me that's still very active that blended with dad, like, hey, I wanted to be wanted, to be seen and known. And also I think guys want to be useful and valued, archetypally. So all that shit was a Gordian knot all together in one. So when I say I need to reconcile that, I need to start undoing that Gordian knot. And I think when I have done some of this with IFS and my own therapy and depth psychology, it starts to get a little lighter and there's more space. And there's less shame, or you were bad, or you really made a bad life choice. That part's starting to lessen. It's more about like, look how fucked up life was for you. Like, you acknowledge what a hard position you actually were in, and you had no fully formed fucking brain yet. Like, how are you supposed to know your life's purpose and meaning at that age? Like, give yourself a break. And so that's been helpful.
Well, and I just had that text. I just texted a client that purpose isn't found, it's forged. You, through your actions and repetition and choices, you craft your tool set, which in turn informs what you make. And I think the thing is, like, if you were not careful, it's easy to like look at some people who are just a-holes, and they just are like, I want to be an engineer. They read books on engineering. At 16, they're building stuff in their garage. And at 20, they're an engineer, and they're not even done with engineering school, and they're already working at a firm. And
who are these people?
And then you're like, cool. Like, I wish I had that clarity on like what I was supposed to do with my energy.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty rare too, right?
Well, I don't know if it's rare, but I think that I like Gary Vaynerchuk's, take on this is, we devalue what comes naturally to us.
Interesting.
Because it comes so easy, we don't think it can be valuable.
Fair. That's actually a really good statement. Yeah, because we're looking at what society says is important. And if it magically lines up like engineering, like society loves the motherfucking engineers, then like you just fly. But if you're a feeling type and you want to help people feel their pain, life says, that's kind of lame. Who cares?
Well, it's
Maybe it's changing now.
soft skills. We like hard skills because they're easy to measure.
Yes.
Soft skills.
Good luck measuring that one. Yeah.
Well,
Much
soft
harder.
skills can be measured, but you're measuring a bunch of things.
Yes, soupy.
Like people, like leadership is a great example. I know Jocko talks about this. No one's born a great leader.
No.
People have aspects
Yes.
of leadership that
Temperament.
come more easy to them.
Yes.
And then other parts of them, they still have to, it's a skill. You
It's
just
a skill.
practice it.
Yeah, and you have to keep doing it.
But those things, so the point of that we're talking about is that's a moment where, to what's that therapist, Stutz.
Stutz, whatever.
He
Yeah,
says
the book, The Tools. Good
that's
book.
where you entered the maze, right? And the maze is, if this one thing were different, my life would be better. If this one person would stop being an a-hole, my life would be better. If this, everything's on hold until that gets resolved. So I think that that question is really valuable that my friend asked, because the answer reveals where the maze is for you.
Where you're stuck.
Yeah. And I think I love powerful questions. So I've spent a lot of time in the maze. And there were times in my life where I was so codependent and intertwined with my friend group. I've have amazing friends. We'll have some of them on the pod. We've had some of them on the pod. But I've had just like the coolest support group that you could ever imagine. And I thought my life was really about them. And
what do you mean by that?
So like my maze was like in another world. Like if I hadn't had bumped into my buddy Ron, who was one of the people who I lived with him when I was in high school, and I was 15, 16, 17. And I lived with my buddy Adrian, whom you've met. And I say people like that saved my life because they gave me a kind of an anchor to something that wasn't painful. And my thought process for so many years was like, well, if I wasn't in that situation, if I had gone to live with my grandfather and my grandmother when I was in junior high, would I have ever met them? Because to me, like those are the most important relationships in my my formative years.
This Army grandfather you're talking about?
Yeah. My grandfather, Modi. He was very generous. He called and he asked if I wanted to come live with him. And at the time I was in junior high and everything was just like chaotic in my life. And I'm sure junior high is a shitty and chaotic time for a lot of kids anyway.
Oh yeah.
You're changing. Your parents don't really know that much about what you need. You need a safe environment to be in. And
they should be asking you.
And I couldn't imagine leaving my friends. And I knew it would be a better existence, and objectively, just a better existence. I knew there would be food on the table, and I could have access to things. I could play sports. But I didn't know how I would exist without my friend group. And I was very intertwined with my mom. And I asked him, I was like, well, what would my mom do? And he was like, it's not for you to worry about what's going to happen to your parents if you're, getting education and getting on with your life. But I hadn't gotten there yet. Yeah. I was still fully in role reversal and like trying to be an emotional caretaker for the family. So previously, if you would have asked me, like, go back in time, what would those moments been? My maze would have begun right around that time. I need these core relationships and otherwise I won't be okay. And so the decisions I made around those were the ones that might have hurt me in the short run or the long run. I don't know. But going through what the conversation about today is going back and actually feeling the feelings and taking the lessons away from each of these moments I don't feel that way anymore. So my answer to the question is, I would go back to the very beginning, my first memory, which is terrifying, but I would go back to that first memory and I would do my entire life exactly the same way that I did it, because I got so much from every moment and every lesson, painful as it was, and uncomfortable and cruel at times as things were for me. I was okay then and I'm okay now.
And that's the transmuting of the trauma. I think that's the point of these shit moments that we have. It does, like you say, forges our purpose if we use it that way.
That's right. It's a choice. So a lot of the things that I think I didn't value at the time were extremely important to me. Being emotionally resilient, like, yes, the role reversal and caretaking my parents, it was an adaptive behavior, but it led to some skills that really helped me today.
Yeah, and you can retain those and dump the rest.
And fitness as a coping mechanism, I got that in junior high, and I started to bring that into my life intentionally, and I'm so grateful for that as well. And yeah, that's the work. And to spiritual bypass, which is what this episode is about.
And emotional bypassing.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I spent 38 or 39 years doing that. And what that looked like for me is that I would have given you the enlightened answer, but I wouldn't have acknowledged all the things I was doing in the moment that weren't working for me, that were making my life harder. And like, an example is just like valuing what other people think about me more than I valued myself. That was a thing that had a really subtle, had its talents into me quite subtly. So work ethic. I worked harder than anyone I knew or read about. And I thought, I mean, part of it was survival, but also part of it was that was my ego. Like, I wanted to leave nothing on the table, and also not have anything. Like, I wanted people to respect the amount of commitment that I had to my craft and to my vision of things. And so maybe it had some positive side effects, but it had a lot of negative ones too. And I wouldn't have acknowledged that. And I would have been like, no, this is just who I am.
As we all do.
So, but we could talk about, I mean, you had a list, right, of ways to spiritually bypass these, like, the things that aren't working for us.
Yeah, spiritual and emotional and psychological. It's kind of hard. They all interlock. It depends on how you want to talk about them or use them. So use them as you will as we talk about them. I'm going to mostly talk about them through a psychological, emotional lens, except for when I get to meditation, which hits the spiritual part. And you're going to be like, meditation, the spiritual bypassing? I will explain.
100%. So I'll kick you off. I'll tee you up for this, because Peter Attia, in his book,
Outlive,
in the last chapter, he is spiritually bypassing his own childhood. And I'll come out of the spiritual end, and you can go with the rest.
What a good book that is too, by the way.
But he, in the book, he talks about his, him having a perfectionist streak that, gives him uncontrollable rage. And Jocko's kind of making fun of him when he was on the podcast, because he's like, here you are, a 52-year-old man, and you're going to get into a fight in the parking lot of a Safeway because someone cut you off. He's like, did you know that was insane when you were doing it? He's like, oh yeah. He's like, oh yeah. Yeah. So, but he would, when he talked about his childhood, he would say, because he was abused, physically, mentally, sexually.
That'll do it.
And he would say it was a good thing because it made him protective and more aggressive.
That's what anger does. It protects.
And it made him competitive, and it drove him to success. And that's a really elegant way to spiritually bypass.
It's very adaptive, considering the trauma he went through. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's not wrong. And that's the thing about spiritual bypassing. It isn't what you're saying. it's not even how you're saying it. It's only what's going on inside of you is the tell.
Exactly. And just because it happens doesn't mean you're bad or this is a shameful move. We all do a version of this, all of us. So we can take shame off the table in this conversation. We're all doing it still, and we probably will do it till the day we die in a certain way. But the point of this podcast is just sort of like hang a light on some of these things that we do, so you can be aware of them, and then actually practice them. Because one way to spiritually bypass is just be quote unquote aware and not do anything with it. Like, oh, I know that, and that's intellectualization. If you go back to our podcast on how to move from thinking about feelings to feeling them, that's that. Like a lot of guys get caught in this trap of like knowledge seeking, and they just read all the books, listen to the podcasts, and they know what the answer is. And as Lori Gottlieb says in her book, Insights, the booby prize, I call it the white elephant gift in therapy. It's like, cool. Now we know, because like for you, like, oh, that time I had to choke out my stepdad on the floor. Oh, that's why I had this traumatic response. And that's why I'm always angry. But did the anger simply vanish by that insight? No. You're just like, now I know why. So intellectualization is a great way to bypass the work. And all humans do it, but I think maybe guys do it a little bit more. It's because maybe we're more on average into the logos aspect of things.
Well, we want things to make sense. And so there's a human need to connect the dots, which I think part of becoming a very conscientious and, competent person is you want to have control of your environment. You want everything to make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So connecting the dots feels good. Like, oh, I get it. So in this conversation, it's an inciting trigger to the thing.
It feels good. Nice little dopamine hit. And then since it feels good, you don't think you need to do any more work because now you feel good. But it's a short term feel good.
Well, there's this, I mean, like, I want to have 2 points of compassion. If you successfully find the source of your trauma or your trigger, then you've done 50% of the work.
Yep. It's great.
And you don't need to do, by the way, you don't need to have a 100% reconciliation with every single part of you to be happy.
You're not going to do that anyways, probably.
So like take some pressure off yourself.
Yeah.
The thing that makes it a problem is if like being vulnerable, if being vulnerable has exploded in your face and caused a schism in your personal life in the past, and that trauma is going to impact the next time you're going to be vulnerable with a partner or a business partner or a friend.
Yep.
So it's going to interrupt everything you're doing. So that and then it's important to not spiritually bypass and not find ways around it, which is what you're talking about, right?
Yes. Amongst a million others. Another one is the refusal to get help when you kind of know something's off. Like if you know something's off, there's something inside you that there's a feeling, and you don't want to feel it. And so there's a big refusal to get help, like go see a coach or a therapist or talk to somebody who keeps suppressing. Repression is the unconscious version. Suppression is the conscious version of pushing that shit in the shadow, so I don't have to think about it. And it's sort of like saying, like, I really don't need to go to the doctor ever again or the dentist. But meanwhile, my teeth are falling out and I'm obese and my bones won't heal. Whatever. You just flat out like, no. But obviously, that's going to cause more problems over time. So that kind of can pair with intellectualization. Sometimes you can rationalize not having to go.
Well, let's talk about the bridge between those things, because what you're doing is you're degrading the function of your life, right? So when your health degrades, like what you just said, like, my body is decaying. What happens is unconsciously, you are not going to think about this. Unconsciously, if you go 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, well, you'll, instead of saying I'm avoiding the dentist, you say, oh, I don't need the dentist.
Bingo.
And you're not logically coming to these conclusions. Your health is paying the price. So what you're doing is you're invalidating your own loss, which is pain. We know. So the loss of your health, you've invalidated. And we do this with a disease in our country, like you read about. Like I I'm a younger athletic person, and I go to the doctor and I have slightly elevated cholesterol. They prescribe me cholesterol drugs to bring them down. I'm like, guys, I'm 40. You don't think we can have another conversation about why I have elevated cholesterol?
Did you measure ApoB, by the way? Not to be dirty.
And you better ask for that. But the funny part is like, so I'm just going to sit here, whatever the contributing factor is, I'm not going to put any, and this is life right here. I'm just describing every aspect of life. There's a contributing factor to the degrade of your mental, physical, spiritual, financial, whatever health it is. Relationships are suffering, things are happening. And instead of addressing that, I just, the high water mark just keeps rising, and I continue to have a lower and lower standard for myself. And that self-devaluation and self-abandonment is what enables that learned helplessness. So pretty soon I don't even open that door anymore. I don't go to the doctor. I don't look in the mirror. I don't do these things. And that just elevates over time. So then when we have an emergency, it's like all of a sudden I had a stroke. All of a sudden I had this or that. And it's like, no, you had 40 years of notice.
Bingo. You weren't following along. Self-abandonment, I just made me think spiritual bypassing, emotional bypassing is self-abandonment. You're abandoning your highest self.
That's right. And it's, if you grew up, I mean, like we have all kinds of euphemisms, and what is it when I'm have a derisive comment, like poor people slander. Ooh, I didn't like that. I touched myself when I said poor people. I'm talking about people from poor backgrounds.
Good unconscious.
I don't like that. Yeah.
Not a Freudian slip.
People from poor backgrounds they very consciously demonize rich people. And so they'll say, like, and I do this to myself because everything I do in my life right now is very fancy, compared to how I grew up. Groceries delivered, I can get coffee out, I make my own schedule. Like I'm living a very fancy lifestyle for me from where I grew up. So every time I elevate my lifestyle or I get a massage or do something nice for myself or make my life a little bit easier or elevate my standard, okay, I want to make a little bit more money. The kickback is always like, oh, you're bougie now? Oh, you need to oh, you want to have an IRA and a 401k? Like, wow, Mr. Moneybags, whatever.
So that old family narrative creeps in again.
100%. And it cracks me up because it's right there. It's so natural.
Yep.
And it's like, people do that to healthy people where they're like, like you're in good shape. Now you're hiring a trainer. It's like, yeah, I'm in good shape. I want to get into great shape. Like, what if I want to do that? What is life for except for having fun and doing the thing that you want to do? There doesn't need to be a reason for it.
And my favorite line is like, must be nice. You're hosing yourself when you say that. Must be nice.
Yeah.
Dude, you can go get those things for yourself mostly when we're talking about these things. Like that person's so rich. Must be nice. Well, you can increase your means too, bro.
Nothing says I'm a bitch like must be nice.
Unless you're missing. Well, even if you are, say you got blown up in Iraq, and they're like, was it Rob Jones? That guy's he runs like marathons now with like prosthetic legs. Rob Jones' journey. He was on jogging.
Yeah.
Like, must be nice. Like, bro, you can't run a marathon and you have legs, and this guy's running marathons with no legs. You can do it.
Well, so you can. I want to be clear. Like, you can have ambition. You may have a hip issue. You may not be able to run marathons. That's not the point. The point is exactly. You get to decide what you want to try and take on and what you don't want to take on.
Yes.
And we're like anybody who's doing like the hate only goes one way. Nobody making more money than me, nobody in better shape than me, nobody happier than me has ever told me I'm working too hard, I'm doing the wrong thing. People, people who are not where I'm at, whatever it is I'm talking about. Those are the people that are trash talk.
They're trying to bring you back down to their level so they don't feel bad about themselves.
Yeah,
perhaps.
And by the way, I like that.
It's a point of success.
I don't mind the shade, and it's funny. And it's funny if I don't mind being trolled. Like I feel like that means I'm in the game.
You're in the game. Yeah, we're relevant.
Yeah, totally. My buddy is like, oh, you moved out to Lake Oswego. And he's like, you got a lot of money now. And I was like, yeah, of course. And he said, great, can I borrow $20? I was like, I don't carry denominations that small. Like,
sorry, bro.
What's a $20 bill? I'm out here now.
Exactly. They carry rolls of hundreds. I'm sorry.
Hundos. I don't know how to do it.
Exactly. No, we don't even carry cash. Like, what is that paper stuff?
So good.
I need the Amex points. I need this paper stuff.
So, so spiritual bypassing is abandoning your own pain and then not acknowledging that there's a violation of your, standards or what you desire. You've taken a loss somewhere.
Yeah. Classic one, of course, is numbing agents.
Yeah. I mean, everything, a numbing agent. So we'll keep going with that. I don't want
to. That can be anything. The typical suspects are substances, TV, porn, gambling, addictive behaviors. But it can even be like sports, like I was talking about. Stuff that I don't want to feel, so let me go distract or calm myself down or numb myself out or check myself out. That's a great way to emotionally and spiritually bypass. You can really go off the bypass to a completely different state. You miss the bypass to the state you're trying to go to. Good double entendre there, like physical states versus actual country states.
Totally.
I'm here for the comedy. Yeah, so be careful with numbing agents, but we all do it. They're just picking exercise. People can be addicted to exercise, workaholism, things like that.
Yeah, the amount of pressure in my life, the amount of pressure I have to numb is inversely related to what I'm avoiding. So if I'm avoiding a conversation, numbing pressure through the roof. If I'm avoiding doing the work of whatever that is, like, making a business decision or like changing my health and fitness, then I have a lot of pressure to numb. If I'm actually not avoiding much, then there's two things that really are defining like how much stress I'm under. Am I asking for help? Like, am I letting other people help me? And am I being realistic about what my bandwidth is?
Yep.
But if you're avoiding, then you're going to have to double, triple, quadruple the problems pretty fast, because your financial problem will become an emotional problem, will become a marital problem, will become a health problem. Like,
yep.
But if you're just tackling things head on, and any pain you can endure today reduces the pain for tomorrow.
That's it. Which pain do you choose? Is it acute short-term relief for a longer-term really bad pain, or this kind of sucks in the moment to, oh, okay, that's much easier to deal with long-term? Like you said, how do you say it leads to relationship problems, emotional problems, go to money problems, but these things love to get married to each other. But that can work for you too, in the right direction. Like, all those things could boost those areas of your life.
That's right. So health, social health, physical health, and financial health all have positive, they positively reinforce one another. The more options you have, the better projects you choose to work on, the better you do on those projects, the more financial rewards, the more access you have to social capital, to social networks. The more socially networked you are, the more the more opportunities you get. So everything is, but it goes the other way too. And this is why you never really want to retreat, because if you retreat in, whatever area of your life is, it's going to affect every other area of your life. And so if it's something that you care about, just move towards that. What are you doing anyway? What are you doing with your time?
Bingo. Like, yeah, I always ask myself when I'm starting to procrastinate just to get that short-term relief. And it gets to some of my parts that like didn't get the feeling of freedom. I had shit imposed upon me all the time. And just like, I want freedom. I don't want to be fucked with. I want my own power. And so those parts misconstrue responsibility as impositions on my autonomy. And so if I'm unconscious about it, I get this resistance feeling. I'm like, no, fuck you. I'm not going to go learn how to make more money or like learn more about this or read that book. And like, and I play it through like, cool. So, well, if I'm not doing that, what else am I doing all day? Sitting here? Am I going to watch TV? I mean, the kids are at school and my wife's doing her thing or working. Like, wow, that's pretty boring. I'm doing nothing. And sometimes that like I need rest and I need to do nothing. But is that what I was born to do? To, Ryan Holiday's point with Marcus Aurelius when he says something about, are you born to just stay in your bed, your nice comfy bed every day? Or is that what you're born to do? Like, or are you born to put your feet on the ground and like go do things? And I have to talk to those parts, remind them I'm not 7 anymore. Like I don't have to run that energy anymore. I don't have to protect myself. Like I do have my own power if I want it. No one's imposing anything upon me but myself. I mean, yeah, I have responsibilities, but I chose those. I chose to have kids. I chose to get married. I chose to have a job. So they're working for me. Why am I resisting the things that come with that? Right.
It's beautiful. Let's go all the way back to the beginning to wrap up this beautiful conversation, because if you go back to the beginning as Tony Robbins says, if you're going to blame your parents, blame them fully, right? So they get the blame for the negative and the positive, right? And so much of the maze, is if you hadn't done X to me, I would be better.
Correct. And I can stay in the victim mentality and never have to do anything.
But the reality is like, and it took me until my bicycle accident to get this for my life. And my mom, the thing my mom doesn't like about me is that I always did whatever I wanted to do. And I chuckle when I say that, but she's absolutely right. Like, because my parents handed me the power, I just took that football and ran right out the front door.
I
never looked back. I was like, I'm in charge.
Yeah. Got the keys to the car. Here we go.
And it was the 80s, and kids could just run and play and do whatever the hell they wanted.
As we did.
And I had a blast. And so all of the things that went wrong doesn't mean that there wasn't a bunch of things that went right. Mm-hmm. And I fully believe that I was better served, my personality, my dharma was completely served by the environment that I grew up in. Not to say that it wasn't difficult, not to say that it was the right thing. It doesn't matter what quote unquote is right or what should have happened. What happened is what happened. So I'm 100% on board with that. And absolutely, I'm not over it. I've got anger and, stuff.
Yeah.
But I also get it. I get it. My parents were confused. They were along for the ride too. And the full circle back to the sports question, which we kicked off this conversation with. I've always been the person that just wanted to be a part of the group. And the group was D&D players. Then I learned how to play D&D. And the group was a bunch of mill workers. I got a job in a factory. And I brought my thing that I brought with me was a passion for health and fitness. So I made my D&D friends work out. I made my millworking friends work out with me. And like, I was the strength shaman in all the groups I was in. When I was in the Army, I was the master fitness trainer. That's a role. It's an additional duty that most people don't even want. They don't want to wake up at 4:30 in the morning to go. Mm-hmm. They don't have something broken inside of them like I do. Great. Perfect. I'll take it.
I guarantee they do. Just a different break.
For me, I'm getting now that the joy of life is just picking the team that you want to root for and showing up, and whatever you show up with is what you're showing up with. Some people come to the tailgate with kegs, some people hot dogs, some people a grill. Like, it doesn't have to be something specific or significant. It just needs to mean something to you, what you're bringing to the show. And if you're not spiritually bypassing, if you're doing the work, you've had the gift the whole time. It's something that you were trying to throw away, and all of your avoidance and all of your stuff is all symptomatic of you thinking you should be somewhere else.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that gets to the next one, just narratives. what you tell yourself. And I was thinking like some of your skills actually came from your pain of like, okay, you're given all the power and you had to caretake. If you just, you were doing that and you backed it off just a little bit to where you're just supporting, now you're a coach. Now you teach, but you learn how to do that from a young age, right? How to have power, how to caretake, how to help people. But now you're learning to do it not at your expense and not under someone else's power. Right?
That's right.
And it's a fine line, and that's the thrust of the nice guy or the good girl.
And so like you just nailed it, man. The active parenting and coaching, believing someone has infinite potential and not believing any of the garbage that they hand you about themselves.
It's their garbage shit.
That's pure coaching, pure parenting, and I'm guess what? I'm still attached. I still get real pissed off when the fucking client doesn't do the thing they're supposed to do and doesn't win. I want them to win. I want everybody. I want to be on the winning team.
Uh-huh.
So I still get aggressive, and I still I get this from clients all the time. Like, I feel a lot of pressure. Good motherfucker. You just paid me a bunch of money. Because we're going to the fucking end zone out here.
Aren't you in the NFL? Don't you want to go to the Super Bowl?
Now, yeah, sometimes I do come in hot, and I'm just saying. But it's a balance. We're all working on it. But that's exactly right. The skills that were birthed from your need to survive, right? Your emotional, your drive to understand people emotionally and get into their world, so that you could figure out why your parents were so fucked up. Great. That's the sawdust from that was a lot of people helped along the way, and you cut out a role for yourself.
The sawdust. That's why we say it's grist for the mill in therapy.
Yeah, man.
There we go.
That's it.
It's useful. So yeah, narratives. So be careful with the story you tell yourself. And we're basically, in a way, like our egos are making up a story about life anyways. And I think it's Marissa Peer. She's a psychotherapist. She does like hypnotherapy. And she wrote a great book called Tell Yourself a Better Lie. Because if you say you're a victim, you can't do anything, and that's my story, and it's all my parents' fault, and that's why I play video games all day. I'm like, there's truth there, but you're also telling your brain that's all we can do. And it'll go check, and we'll do it. If you also start making up a different narrative, you're like, say you want to go to the gym, and you're like, you really believe like, I'm not a person that goes to the gym. And I think I've talked about this analogy in the podcast before, so I won't make it too long. When you start going to the gym over and over, your brain sees data that there's proof that you go to the gym. And before you know it, it'll start telling yourself, yeah, I'm a person that goes to the gym. And the new narrative is I'm a person that goes to the gym. And now you've made a change. So what you tell yourself, your brain listens to. So and your parts listen to. And your parts, that gets all soup because your parts are telling yourself things too that may or may not be objectively accurate. They're emotionally accurate according to their viewpoints, according to their wounds from your childhood. So you have to be careful with the voices in your head. And I love the Buddhist statement, you don't have to believe everything you think. You really don't. And from your highest self, you can make a narrative that works for yourself.
Well, too often you're talking about useful delusion.
Useful delusion.
We're deluding ourselves all the time, but you have to have a little bit of delusion. If you're an entrepreneur, and you're going from 0 to $250,000, 0 to $1 million, whatever your first benchmark is, you are holding a vision of something in your mind that doesn't exist.
That's a great way to put it.
Absolutely have to delude yourself into thinking that the next six steps are going to go right.
Yeah.
Now, you may be someone who's had a lot of experience and seen it go that way before, so you know how it's going to go.
Yeah, your brain goes, we've had some experience. This could be true.
Listen to what I just said. You know how it's going to go. In that analogy, right? You're psychic. You already predicted the future, but you're deluded into thinking that that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah. And
so it's useful delusion.
Yeah.
So
is that the secret?
And the experience, it kind of is. Self-fulfilling prophecies. When you decide to create them, you are correct.
Self-fulfilling prophecy. Yes.
So you can totally empower yourself to do that.
That is the term for it.
And most of what we experience in life is just our version of it. And I've sat around with my friends and we've all had our, laptops open and tried to reconcile names and dates. Our names and dates are all over the place. That thing that happened the following weekend, that happened the weekend before, those were 4 years apart, but in our emotional mind, that happened the same day.
Uh-huh.
So we're already crafting a reality around our experience of it.
It's not objective.
And I am so curious as to what other people's reality looks like, because mine gets dark sometimes. But when I'm empowered, I create an empowering delusion, and when I'm not empowered, then it's not. So just decide to be empowered, and most of that is this work that we're doing on the podcast, transmuting the trauma.
Absolutely, yeah. And you will, if you bypass, you won't do what you just said. And again, these are protective. It's their defense mechanisms, and that's Freud had like a list of like, I don't know, 12 to 15 of them, 2 of which I'll briefly get into that are classics is projection. Everyone's heard that word. And projective identification, which is a little more sinister. Projection is like you feel kind of angry, and it like you see your wife and like, are you angry? And they're not. It's like you don't really know that you're really angry. You're trying to kind of blame it on them subconsciously. Projective identification is manipulation. You're trying to blame them for the anger that you feel. You don't want to feel it. You want to disown it. Oh, you're the one that's really mad. And like kind of like maybe a gaslighting personality disorder scenario. That's a lot more sinister. But both of those are genius defense mechanisms to not have to feel your stuff. You're trying to give it away to someone else. And if you find a good nice guy or good girl, caretaker, codependent type, they sadly will take it. The doormats will take it. They'll fall on their own swords for you. So those two often find each other, sadly, as a codependent relationship. And we've talked about that before on our previous podcast, Are You a Nice Guy? If you want to check out more information on that. But yeah, just go Google like Freud's defense mechanisms. You'll get all of them, and they make complete sense. And they're all spiritual bypassing in a way, or emotional bypassing. They're defending you from feeling shit you do not want to feel and protecting you from something. They're adaptive, but then they get in your way.
Sick. I mean,
sick in a good way, or we're talking about sick in...
Well, the hard part is you have to have the slow down and have the self-awareness to know what you're doing doesn't make sense. Like,
sure.
When I was recovering from my accident, I was really desperate for many things. And when I'm not in a good place, in my mind, everyone else needs saving as well. So then my fix it, like when there's a lot of pressure on me, the fix it person comes out even harder because everyone else is on their last leg, right?
And you have to be the one that unfucks it.
Sure. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just my imagination that everyone is desperate if I'm desperate. And
that's projection.
Yeah, that's projection. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't, when you're in that state, it took me like 6 months to realize that I was projecting that onto everyone else because I was not in a good place. And it was only when my place started to shift that I was like, oh, I could take or leave that next job, or I could take or leave this next thing. And then I was like, oh, I guess so could everyone else. Like, oh yeah, everyone else is in a different position than me.
Yes, you did exactly what Jung would say. We tried to take back our projections, reclaim our projections. You took it back. Oh, that was mine. That wasn't everybody else. That was actually mine. And when you do that, you do a service to the world because you're not throwing your feces on everyone else. You're like, no, it's mine to digest and put out in the toilet. I'm not going to have that person try to digest that for me.
That's it.
Sorry for the bad analogy. But.
No, it's a good analogy because the biggest service you can do to the world is be a better person because the world needs better people.
Yeah.
So taking care of your shit, to stay in the feces analogy, but handling your shit is the most important thing that you can do. So it's your life's task. Like, don't worry about paying the Mona Lisa. Worry about looking in the mirror and being real with who you see in the mirror and then being real with the next person you talk to.
There you go. Yeah, and don't do projective identification because that's forcing your feces into another person's bowels. And they got their own shit in there, man. Come on.
Wow, we just did a fecal matter transplant.
Damn, does that shit work though? People that's like a thing, right?
Mixed data. I personally don't see how if you don't change your complete environment and diet, how your gut biome won't go back to whatever you were doing.
And I ain't gonna swallow a capsule of someone else's shit.
Not anymore.
Sorry. Yeah. Exactly.
Not after what happened last time.
Anyways, we will not lose more listeners by talking about that one. Barbed wire topic, as Huberman likes to say. Last one I got in here, I said in the beginning that meditation can be part of spiritual bypassing. And a lot of people scratch their heads at that one and be like, but isn't that isn't like saying prayer is spiritual bypassing? Well, technically that one could be too. Dr. Schwartz, the creator of IFS, got me hip to this because he talks about it. And some of your parts may be down with using meditation to bypass feeling things, right? If I don't want to feel stress or anxiety or XYZ, I can go to my meditation part, which is the part where you simply follow your breath. And I have a thought and I have a feeling and I let it go and I go back to just being with the breath. And yeah, you're going to ignore the pain, sure. Right then and there, it's not going to be there because you're going right to the present moment, and it feels good to put those burdens down for a second. And that's one of the benefits of meditation, but it's not the full point. So in my practice, it's shamatha vipassana. Shamatha is the first part where you're just noticing the breath or sounds or feelings. You're doing one thing at a time, thinking about one thing versus a bajillion. And you're going to think about a bajillion things. The point is not to think. That's whoever says that, like, the point of meditation is to learn how to not think. Like, dude, that's anti-human. Even monks will think. Your mind thinks, your parts are thinking. So the point is like, bring it back. And over time, you have more time where you're not, quote unquote, having the monkey mind discursive thinking. And it gives space for what vipassana or vipassana, Pali versus Sanskrit, means insight. You get chance for those emotions to come up or those aha moments to come up. It's a different kind of awareness. It's not, you might have images, but it's not thinking like egoic thought. If you bypass, you're not going to get there. You don't want to feel those feelings. And Jack Kornfield often talks about, like, in meditation, like, you've deepened your practice when you spontaneously start crying because stuff comes up. Like, you're opening. Yeah, that's the vipassana. Like, the discursive mind has took a chill pill. The parts of, like, getting a chance to be seen and felt and, like, emotions are coming up. You're not spiritual bypassing at that point. You're obviously, if you're crying, you're not emotionally bypassing. You're moving stuff through. But a lot of people can get hung up on, like, I don't want to feel that, so I just want to feel bliss, quote unquote. I don't feel good all the time. All the time, it's like, I want to use a substance. It's the same move. I want to go numb out or check out. And so they get stuck, and then their ego clamps onto that. And as soon as your ego clamps onto that bliss experience, you've immediately started planting the seeds of suffering, because if that goes away, you are disappointed and it sucks. So you double down. I'll meditate for longer, for 3 hours. And so you start getting this habit of, like, I am this guy that doesn't think that much, and I can meditate for 4 hours a day, and I'm so spiritual. Oh my gosh, and now I'm a guru, and I'm handing out Kool-Aid. And you know where that ends.
Yeah, you get a cult and you get about 12 wives.
Exactly. Yeah. And genius spiritual bypassing. I mean, man, that's fucking brilliant bypassing right there. But they can happen to people, not the grandiose types. It can happen to all of us, where we can get stuck and just, I'm not supposed to feel things or think things. I'm supposed to think and feel nothing in meditation. Not true. But some people get stuck there. And some parts of us like that, because it's like, cool, we get to take a vacation from having to fucking do this heavy lifting we don't want to do. So they'll just stay with the shamatha over and over and over and over. And they think that they get this ego that they're this pious person. And it was kind of funny because at Naropa, when I was doing the master's portion of my program, we do a lot of meditation. And we'd do it on our own. We're doing month-long retreats. Before every class, it was like 10 to 20 minutes of meditation before we did the lecture. And like the first 90 days, like, we thought we were hot shit. Like, damn, we're like meditating, we're really cool.
You start in 90 days in a row. That's a good practice.
Oh yeah, it's really good. But the ego thinks you're hot shit, right? And so then teachers knew this was going to happen. And then so we come back from Thanksgiving or Christmas break, and they go, oh, so how'd that go? You know, and you go and you think, oh, I'm going to go back home and I'm going to tell all my family about how awesome this practice is. And then I'm going to get them down to Buddhism and, like, dude, you should meditate. And then your mom says that one thing that just gets your goat, and then you freak out and you realize, okay, I'm I'm not enlightened. And it's a good lesson. It's like, that's not the point. It's not the point, right? The point is to move through this. You've just touched the tip of the iceberg with what meditation brings you. And it was such a genius move. Almost all the professors were asking us about our. So how was Thanksgiving, or how did your Christmas go?
If you're really detached, and you're good, right? Like if you processed your stuff, and if you're with your stuff,
yeah, you didn't bring it up at Christmas dinner.
Yeah.
You don't need to go bring it home. You're good. Yeah. Well, that takes practice, but you can't do the bypassing part. That's why I love, in the way I was trained, shamatha / vipassana. They go together. You still have to calm the mind. Everyone gets hung up on the shamatha. Like even Sam Harris's app is like mostly that. It's like he's good. He's brilliant at it. The waking up app. Go back to this. Look for the thinker. All that stuff. It's very heady in a way, but it's really good at getting you to just come back. The vipassana part, it's much harder to get to, or vipassana. It takes a little bit longer amount of time, more time sitting with just coming back to the present moment over and over and over and over.
Why do you personally get so passionate about meditation?
I think I've just had a lot of caffeine.
So you were pretty passionate the last time we talked about it too, but
I just think it's amazing because it's prayer is somewhat similar, depending on type of prayer. Like I was reading this good book written by a Jesuit priest, and he was talking about there are different forms of prayer, and I'm like, huh? And he's like, yeah, most people do this thing called petitionary prayer, where you're asking for something from God, like a petition. Mm-hmm. Please bless that my family will be blah, 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 and I get that.
Here's my list.
Here's my list, exactly. And then all these other ways of prayer, they're totally different, and I haven't gone down that path yet, which might be kind of interesting, but I'm sure there's a lot of crossover. But there's something about just opening to your present moment and sitting with what's happening right in front of you right here, right now, because that's the only thing that is real, is a series of nows. Like now is gone, and now is gone. Now it's here. It's gone. Past is a memory, future's a fantasy. We only have now. And it's, as soon as you say it, it's gone. And that's just kind of mind blowing. But here's a great way to not spiritually bypass. If you're in a shitty place, and hopefully when you're in a shitty place, you obviously do. Just ask yourself, okay, right here, right now, barring I'm not like getting shot at or mugged or in a car crash, how am I doing? Am I okay? Like you and I right now, is everything okay right now? Sure, we have extraneous problems that we have to deal with in the future and shit that happened in the past, but right here, right now, is everything fine? Yep, it's sunny outside. We're doing a podcast. I can take a breath. I'm actually okay. I'm actually okay right here, right now. And that's why, what's his name? So many Buddhist teachers in my head. Thich Nhat Hanh says, present moment, beautiful moment. That's it. And it's so hard to remember if you don't practice meditation, because the point of meditation with shamatha is to learn how to remember to have mindfulness, which is learning how to concentrate. You can't have mindfulness very well if you're not practicing noticing, right? That's what mindfulness is noticing. So you're not practicing noticing, you won't be as mindful. And at some point, you notice that when you're meditating, it's not that different than waking, quote unquote, out of meditation life. You're doing the same thing. You're just more present over and over, more aware of what's going on outside and inside. And you're definitely not spiritual bypassing if you get there. So that's where meditation can be super powerful. But it's like lifting weights. You got to do it cumulatively. Like if I worked out twice a week, not bad. If I work out 4 days a week, getting better. 6 days with a day of rest, and whatever program I'm jacked and my blood works amazing. It's kind of like meditation, like 20 minutes a day, every day, and then up it to a half an hour, and then maybe an hour. Sometimes you don't even need an hour. It's just like gauge how is it going for you. Oh, maybe now I want to find a meditation instructor, and maybe a sangha, and then maybe I like the whole religion part, or maybe I don't. I just want to stick with the apps. It doesn't matter, but it will teach you to access your inner world so much better. And that's, if you want to do IFS or Gestalt, that's where that stuff is. This is the phase 2 of therapy, as I call it. When you actually are doing the inner work, you have to be able to know, what does it feel like? And from my throat to my belly button, what's going on in there? You can't intellectualize that. That's mostly guys, but a lot of people walk around cycle with, if our heads are floating around and our bodies from the neck down don't exist when it comes to our emotions. We're just trying to think about them. But if you're sitting and meditating and you're noticing what's coming up emotionally and not trying to just let it go and ignore it, be with it, as Tara Brach says, can I be with this? I love that statement. Can I be with this feeling? If you ask yourself that, usually it's yes. Your highest self will always say yes, because it's your highest self. If you're driving or something like that and you need to focus, it might be no, but like usually, generally it's yes. Michael Singer's is relax. So I use this sometimes, tell myself relax. And then the second question is, can I be with this? Like sit with it. Can I feel it? What is its quality? Am I getting images in my mind's eye? Am I getting memories? But mostly staying with the somatic feeling. Is this sadness? Is this anxiety? Where in my body am I feeling it? And that could be your, back to shamatha or samadhi, your anchor can become emotions. And I've actually done that instead of breath, instead of sound. I like sound the best because I can't control it. Mm. I like to control things I can't control. When the sound happens with breath, you notice like your central nervous system just breathes itself. When you're meditating, you try to notice your breath, your ego will start to try to like breathe you. It's fascinating. Like it'll start to like take over, like, am I breathing in and out too long? You start thinking about it. It'll take over breathing consciously. It's wild. But if you just check out, your CNS just breathes itself. You don't have to worry about anything. So watching yourself breathe without you doing anything is actually hard. It's hard to just release and let your CNS just breathe itself. It's an amazing thing to just see when you meditate. But I've moved to the internal world. Let me just see what's going on. What's going on inside me right now? Like whatever that means for me. Do I have physical pain or emotional pain? What sensations? That's my anchor point. I'm just going to stay there. And then, I'm going to have thoughts about the future and what I got to do today or that memory. Notice, oh, okay. We called it touch and go at Naropa. You touch. Oh, there it is. Cool. And okay, and I'm going to put you down and I'm going to go back to my anchor. And there's touch and grab, which is I'm going to hold on to that and then you tangent and have a spider web of thoughts forever and then you forget you're meditating. Or go and go is the spiritual bypass. Nope. La, 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 la. Not thinking about la, 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 la. We allow the thought and then we put it down and we go back to the anchor. So for me, it's more the internal states now. And this is different for everybody, but if you want to do internal work, I think doing exactly what I just said is so helpful. But everyone's a little bit different. You might have to learn how to just follow the breath first or follow sounds first as the one thing until you can get your mind to get it, get the ego to get it, get your parts to get it before they can settle a little bit. And then maybe you start moving into your body. For some people that have trauma or psychoses, like meditation can really not good at first. It can kick some stuff up. So ease in. So I don't know. I can go on and on about meditation. I just think it's incredible.
Is this important to you because outside of dance, it helps you get into your body?
Great question. Yeah. Because I've always known my body physically, right? Sports. I know when it hurts. I know when I'm strong. I know I'm weak. And I think so I had some strong parts of me of like, shit really sucked growing up. Let's go ahead and these wounded parts, let's not feel them, or let's do these adaptive behaviors to not be flooded at this moment and get away from that overwhelm moment, like the checking out, numbing out. Those are still ones that stick with me today that I had to use. I was talking to my therapist about this in therapy, and she asked me, like, in a hypothetical world, what do you think those behaviors served for you? And I think we were talking about the avoidance, procrastination. So I have my routine for the day, and sometimes I can get really rigid about it. And she's like, in a hypothetical world, what does a rigid routine do for you? What does that work? And like, you kind of release what really happened in this hypothetical world. And it's like, well, it would control for chaos. And I was like, ding, 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 ding. Oh, my childhood was complete chaos. No wonder I was always looking for a sense of control. And like a part of me just kind of like released a little bit. And when you feel something soften like that, a part's like, it's like, you got the message, dumbass. Like, thank you. I've been doing this work for a long time. And you think about it, it's like, hey, if I have a really rigid routine, I'm blocking myself from spontaneity and the good things of chaos, opportunity, all the stuff that could come. If I'm too rigid, I can't do that. So what was protecting me now is getting in my way. So now I have a choice point. The second one was, I would go and when I didn't feel, I had this strong need to feel seen and wanted. And so I only got that way when I got in trouble, or if I went and isolated in my room and see how many days it took for them to realize I was not in my room or not around them. Like, hey, where's Miles? Where's he been? And they'd show up eventually, hours later, maybe, or maybe when it was time for school the next day. And I'd be seen. Or I'd get in trouble for something and I'd be seen. This isn't all conscious, but you learn like, oh, that's how I'm seen. If I fuck up or if I just hide, they'll come and see me. And so when I have strong emotions, I could act them out and get in trouble. Maybe my wife will notice me if I do something stupid, or I've done this one a lot when she does something I don't like and I'm mad. I'll just isolate and go in my room and see how long it takes her to notice that I'm upset. And it's like, oh, this is what I did as a kid. And so these are the parts, right? And she's like, what did that serve for you? And it's like, it served for being sane. And she's like, so it sounds like we need to have you learn how to see yourself. God, yeah, damn it, that's the work, yeah. But it's so true. That's why this internal work is so much more powerful than the phase one of the insight part, the white elephant gift. You need it. You need to know it helps to know why things are where they came from. It does help to know. Sometimes you could just, if the person has enough insight already, you can just jump to phase two and you'll get the backstory in the phase two when you're talking about parts. And it's like, oh, so this part's telling you it's about age 7. And I'll ask, well, what was going on at age 7? And then that person will tell me what happened at age 7 and be like, oh, this abuse happened and blah, blah, blah. So you're going back in time and I'm getting the life story while in the present moment of the part talking. So it just depends on where everybody's at. Some people, you cannot start with phase two because they have no insight. They don't know why things are. And well, let's start with the tip of the iceberg, the easy things, the cognitive behavioral therapy, let's talk to you about like what's attachment theory. Let's give you the blueprint. Like, here's these things in psychology that happen to humans. Let's give you that. And that's a great thing for them to start with. And then they start to trust you, and then you can safely move into phase two, which is doing the deeper work. And that's when the shit actually changes. And it's hard though. That's the hero's journey, man. That's when you're heeding the call to adventure.
You call it the hero's journey. I call it your life's task. And the phase two actions are where I think is more intuitive, because what you're talking, spiritual bypassing, here's one way to think about it. If you have a house and you have a lawn, you got to mow the lawn sometimes. People put off mowing their lawns.
Or they pay someone else to do it for them.
Pay someone else to do it for them. But the lawn's got to be mowed.
Yep.
Unless the house is on fire.
Yep.
Then you need to put the lawnmower down.
That's what I've been doing wrong all this time.
And you need to get your family out of the house and you need to put the fire out. Spiritual bypassing is mowing the lawn.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that it's not good to meditate or pray, but if you're doing that in lieu of the next useful action, the next useful action is actually where the change occurs, to the point. It's phase two.
Mm-hmm.
The obvious thing is usually the most important thing. And it's also the thing you're avoiding, right? So, people, I'm in a bunch of different coaching groups, nutrition, fitness, but it's all in the entrepreneurial space and online coaching. And people are like, I'm not making any money. Well, you're not making money because you're not selling anything. That's it. That's the only reason you're not making any money. You can intellectualize it and talk about how Americans don't appreciate their health and how no one values what I do. But you have to sell something. You must get paid the money to solve the problem. And it's not that complicated. Now, you may be anxious about your writing skills. You don't want to be seen. You don't want to put yourself on video.
Correct. That's really what it's about.
Cool. The doing of it is the getting over it.
Yeah. And then it tells your brain there's some data that you actually did it, and then it starts to buy in that you can do it.
That's it. Now, we must like contend with those things, and you'll learn self-compassion by looking at your own video, listening to your own podcast, and being like, oh, there's some things I could do better, but there's some things I did right. And you take some useful delusion, you take some useful feedback and go. And the meditative part is 5 minutes, 5 hours, whatever you want to contribute to just being with what comes up for you in the process. And grief and anger and all those things that come up less and less, or they're less jarring if you actually experience them. And that's the sort of the mechanical view of spiritual bypassing. It's not that you're doing the wrong thing.
No.
It's you're just doing the syntax is wrong, and the allocation of resources is wrong in the sense that it will not create the thing you're trying to create.
Bingo. Actually, you can self-destruct.
There will be no home.
Want.
If you don't put out the fire,
Exactly.
There will be no home. The lawn will look nice.
Beautiful lawn. Yeah. Sprinkles will come on.
And that's the hard part. Like, so almost every catastrophe has a lot of lead-in information. Slap, brick, feather. Wife complains you work a lot. Wife wants to go to marriage counseling. Wife hits you with divorce paperwork. There were messages all along the way about things that are going on that you're not doing well as a partner. And you say, out of the blue, she just serves me divorce paperwork.
It's so weird.
And the hundreds of messages that you're getting along the way, we're just not being, honored. So spiritual bypassing is basically just whatever you're doing besides solving the problem is either coping or creating problems.
And that's why it helps to learn to meditate, so you can concentrate, so you can notice, so you can be mindful about it, so you can realize.
Do you help people with that when you're working with them as a coach or a therapist?
Meditation? Was that your question? If they're open to it, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Reach out and ask Miles questions about this. If he loves talking about it.
Yeah, or I would recommend good apps or places people can go to deepen their practice if they want to go the full quote unquote religious route with Buddhism. It's hard to really call it a religion. It is, but it isn't. It's kind of splits the difference. Spiritual path.
Yeah, some people are religious about going to the bar, so just be religious about something healthy.
You can make a cult out of anything.
Do you have anything else to add?
We have to make this podcast a cult at some point. So please do share this with the cult followers in your life. Push that follow button, share it. It really does help get this out there more. Leaving reviews, all that stuff. Separates if it's a bad review, you can.
Leave a bad review. I like it. I like it good. Give me some trolling. I'm here for it.
I guess that means we're relevant. We're in the game, so yeah, we'll go.
Said something funny.
Yeah, all that stuff does help. And until next time, just notice.
Notice.
All right, we're out.
Go Eagles.
Go Eagles. Go Birds.